Going in a second here. Some guy keeps spamming me about a video from 3 years ago, but I think we'll be streaming in just a second. Yeah, there we are. So I'll go ahead and tell the world. No, that's not reload. That's reload. All right. Streaming indie dev. Doing text boxes and underwater terrain. Paste. And then over here. Oh, I also got some comments over here. There we are. So, sorry, I tend to actually hit a couple of places I don't normally hit in the social media circle when I'm about to stream because I post stuff there, but it turns out that sometimes people use those social media platforms for social media. Weirdos. Anyway, last week what we did is we created a mission system, a very, very primitive mission system. Today we're going to develop that a little bit further, and then we're going to work on some terrain. How fun. So by working it further, we're going to create text boxes so that we can have text events. So to create a text box, we're going to want to work in the UI system, which is this giant invisible thing right here. Now, most of the game is going to be holographic, using in-game holograms. But for the text box, I don't think we're going to be able to do that because the text boxes are... Oh, it's over here, my bad. Because the text boxes are going to have to be visible. They represent audio. So it would be a bit of a challenge to try and make them in-world holographic, given the diversity of zooming in and angles and stuff like that. It would just be a pain in the butt. So this is going to be the one thing where we don't make it an in-world hologram. These text boxes are going to be out of world. So this is going to be the main outside layer. I don't know, 200 maybe. And what we're going to want to do is make this a custom border. We're going to use a 9-slice operator in a little bit here, create ourselves a nice custom border. But for now, we'll just leave it as an opaque panel. So that's going to be our text box. Inside of that panel, we're going to obviously create a text object. This is not as straightforward as it seems, though, because what we actually need to do is have multiple things going on here, which we'll get to in a second. This text box is going to be, large like this, but the thing is that we don't want it to be maxed out. We don't want it to go all the way to the edge. We're going to put 200 pixels on the side there, and then 10 on the others. And then we're going to go and make this nice and fat, something like 60. No, it's too big. Something like 40. There we are. And then we're going to go ahead and just use this text for a while. We can change the font later. It's no big deal. Abracadabra. Okay, and you can see how we have 3 but not 4. So we either want to make the text bigger or smaller. I think smaller is better in this case. There we are. We could also use a best fit, but the best fit is going to make things look weird. So I think it's better if we manually size it. This means that we can have up to 4 lines of text. It's going to be pretty straightforward. So we also need to have a portrait, a representation of a portrait. We're not going to be using a portrait just yet, but the portrait's going to be a raw image. So we'll use this raw image. We'll stick it over on the left like this. And we will make it the right size, which is going to be 200 by 200. And what we're going to end up doing is using some kind of camera, making it a 3D camera. So this is going to be a render texture eventually. For now, we're just going to make it a purple. No, I didn't want to click that. I want to click this. We're just going to make it a purple stand-in so that we don't forget what it is. And we're going to call that portrait. Now, the other thing we have to remember here is that we probably want to know who's talking. So in that case, I think that we have a couple of options. One is we can have it here on the portrait. Another is that we could move everything down and have it run across the top. And another one is that we can have it kind of run across the top here. For some reason, I wasn't thinking about putting a name in when I was envisioning this in my head. So now I am not thinking about it quite right. Let's go ahead and split it up into two sets. That's what we're going to do. So this is going to be the text box, and we're going to have the text box actually be offset from the left like this. And the text itself is only going to be offset like this. And then we're going to duplicate the text box, and this is going to be the portrait box, like so. We may put them inside another container object later. I'm not sure. So for the portrait box, it's going to be a different shape and a different size. So what that's going to be is this, and it's only going to be 20 wide. So it'd be 20, 20, 200, I mean. Wait, that's 2,000. That's 200. You can see how our pivot is not in the corner, so we keep drifting. Just go ahead and fix that. So I think that we're going to want to move the text box a little bit further due to the heavy padding we're using here. There we are. So this portrait, what we can do is we can add in a text box that goes below it. So if we take this portrait box and we make the height larger, or we could make it thinner. Let's make it a width of 160. Then the portrait can be a width of 160 as well, like this. What? No, here. There we are. And then we can put the text box down below the portrait, and that'll be the name. And obviously the name is going to be not quite that shape. We'll just move it into position here and fix up the shape. Obviously the name is not Abracadabra. It's going to be something like, here we are. Nope, that's way too small. John Jacob Jingleheimer. Just trying to test out some stuff here. So we'll go ahead and use Alex McLongname. And the basic idea here is that we have to decide how we're going to fit this name in, and if we're going to use multiple, if we're going to overlap with the title. I think what we want to do is put it at the top for reasons that'll become obvious when we do it. There's going to be transparency at the top. So if we put it at the top, then what we'll get is we'll be able to rely on the transparency behind the head of whoever we're talking to. If there is no transparency behind the head, we'll have to rethink it, but it should be okay. So we're just going to put this down on the bottom instead of at the top, like so. And then we'll adjust the name box to be full width. Maybe just a little bit of offset. There we are. So that is a best fit. So if we change the name, it will change. So we can call this Dave, and you can see how big Dave is. We'll have to work on exactly how we want it to look and feel, but for now, this is okay. We'll just live with this as is. And then over here, we'll just change this because it's no longer correct. There we are. So with that in mind, what we're going to want to do is actually make this text box pop and have like zoomy animations and all sorts of stuff. So there's a couple of aspects of that. One of the aspects is we're going to want to use a mask that kind of flows across so that it pops into space correctly. And another is that we're going to want to flow the text into the text box, character by character. Both of those things are fairly straightforward, but let's go ahead and do the animation first, just because I feel like doing the animation first. So if we were to create a new panel here, like so, it can contain both of these other text boxes. If we do this, for example, and then pop up top like this, and then we have the height be, 200 and something, 260, 240. So that would be a panel that is right here in the same space. If we change this to have a mask, like so, then what we can do is, as we pan it across, we should be able to get the stuff behind it to disappear. Unfortunately, right now it's in behind, so we're going to move this stuff to be behind it. And now when we move it, it doesn't work because apparently it's children. I can never remember what is what. I'm super annoyed by this because I want to move the mask graphic, and if the mask graphic moves, I have to move everything else counter to it if they are children of it. So there's a lot of other mask stuff here, but none of it is terribly useful. I don't know what a sprite mask is. Maybe one of those is a better choice. If you happen to know, let me know. Right now, what we're going to have to do is just going to have to do counter animations, which is just annoying. It's just stupid because, as you can see, these things follow along. So if they fall out, what we get is a mask. It actually cuts them out. See? So what we're going to do is we're going to have the panel have a texture that's kind of a holographic glitter. We'll go ahead and build that right now. Here is an app for drawing shit. And we're going to just have a black backdrop for starters so that we can see what we're doing. Boom. And then we're going to draw some lines across it. So we'll just grab some hair lines and just draw it in a white because we can always tint it later. Now I have actual art stuff, but I don't really feel like doing actual art stuff. I feel like just half-assing it like this. So that's what we're going to do. Stoop. And nope, not good enough. Stoop. All right, and then down here, we're going to want to just fill it. Oh, too far, sorry. There we are, something like that. And then what we can do is just hide these layers and then save that as hollow stripes. So now we've got a hollow stripes image, which we may change. It's not a big deal if we change it. And there it is right there. We can just tag it. Alpha is transparent so that we can see it. And then over here with the mask, we can drop our hollow stripes into the mask or not. Oh, is it not marked as... Hold on. There we are. There we are. So you can see how we have these holes in it now. We can actually turn off the mask graphic, and if we change the alpha on this color here, it should change when it's visible, but it turns out it's really quite sensitive. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over here and we're going to lower the transparency of this down to like 20%, making it basically invisible. But that means that we'll have greater control over... no, it doesn't seem to want to give us control, does it? You see how there's like this and then... Okay, so what we're going to want to do, I guess, is use the correct drawing line and bring it down by 1. Or maybe even 2. I think that will help. So, unfortunately, it's really aggressive. I may have to try it again with a different setup. Don't know. This is not ideal. So basically the idea is that we'll run the mask across these and kind of spawn them into existence. But it's not going to work out very well if I can't get a very good holographic image. On the other hand, what we really want to do is this mask needs to be huge. So what we'll do is we'll take the portrait box out like this, and then we'll grab this mask, turn the mask graphic back on. And the idea is that when the mask graphic is... I turned it back on, but it's got a really bad alpha. When the mask here is finished, it should be opaque. So I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. I've done it before, and I know why I did it the way I did it before, but it was kind of crappy. I'm hoping that I can do it a different way this time. First off, I think that this is upside down. Yeah, so we're going to just flip this. There we are. And then what we'll do is we'll scale it. Oh, can we just adjust the height? Yeah, okay, so we'll just adjust the height. That's better than scaling it. And you can see that because of the tilt, it turns out that it needs to be scaled quite a bit to get it to come down far enough. That's probably too far. So what we're going to do is we're going to completely redo this entire thing. So we're going to change the canvas size to 256 by 512. How about 128 by, no, 256 by 512. Like that. And we're going to turn all of this stuff back on, and we're going to delete this. And we're going to try again because I somehow did not get a very good result out of that. That turned out to be pretty crap. So maybe it's because some of this stuff is better than others. Let's go ahead and try it with this instead. So the idea here is that we've got some lines that will always be lined up. But if we use a perspective ruler, unfortunately there's not really a good way to do this without using the perspective ruler. But now that we've got a perspective ruler, we can just kind of hash through like this. But this is the hairbrush, and it's way too aggressive. So we're going to go ahead and use the two lines brush instead. And basically, everything below this line is going to be opaque white. But we can just adjust the brush size to change exactly how heavy these lines are. Now the issue we've got is that these lines are going to end up being crisp. There's no, alas, there's no way for the mask to operate in a manner that isn't on or off. It can't change the alpha of what's rendering behind it, which is really obnoxious, but that's what we get. We can't really do anything about it, so... Oop, that wasn't it. All right. Yep, too fat. All right, and then we'll just fill in below that with a flat white. Oh, let's... Doop. All right, that's pretty decent. Maybe. Let's find out. Oh, it's upside down again. Hold on. You know what? Let's flip it. All right, there we are. So now that it's nice and opaque, we don't have to worry about trying to fiddle with the offset color or anything. All we really need to do is make sure that the mask is large enough that this corner touches that corner, and this is quite large enough. So we'll put the portrait boxes back inside, like so. And there are lots of other things I kind of want to do instead, but this is a good place to start. We can always go back and tweak it later. So this mask is going to be part of a larger object, which we will call a dialogue canvas, because it's a canvas. And we're going to want to add an animator here. Boom. So adding an animator will allow us to create animations like this. Doop. And here we've got a subconstruct assets animations. We're going to call this a holographic in. The holographic in is actually going to start somewhere else, but we need a good anchor. So we'll pull over here at maybe 0.3. And this is going to be where we set up our flat, where we're setting up our not animated at all part, like that. But I forgot to hit record because I'm not very bright. There we are. So we're going to just say position 1 and then bring it back down to 0. This is our ending position. Our starting position is going to have the mask be off the top of the screen. But unfortunately for us, the portrait box and the text box have to remain where they are, which is why we have to do a counter animation. Counter animations are dumb. It would be better if we were allowed to do this a different way, but I can't think of any other way to do it. If you can, let me know. We'll just pull these down like this until they are in the right spot, which is roughly there. If they wobble a little bit, it's not so bad. And you can see that what happens is we can't see anything. Where the heck are they? Oh, they remain offset, don't they? God damn it. Like that. There we are. So, boom. See? That's the basic idea. I think we can probably create a better texture for this later, but that is the heart of it right there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to save that animation, and then we are going to make sure that it is set up as we want it to be set up, which means not looping, because that would be weird. There we are. And we're going to need to create an animator. So if we look over here in the dialog canvas, you can see how it has a controller already built. It automatically creates one. All we have to do is pop that up and start to fill it. So here's the base layer, which apparently is errored. Okay, so okay, I don't know what happened there. It was deciding it wasn't going to show any of this shit. So we're going to go ahead and use the holographic in as the main animation, and we're going to allow it to holograph out, which is just going to be the same animation but backwards. And basically all we really need to do is make sure there's a parameter to allow you to switch between them. So out. And so this trigger, I did make it a trigger, right? I can't, yeah, is that a trigger or a Boolean? This is a trigger, so this is a Boolean, delete that. And basically any state goes to the holographic out when you tell it to. There we are. So by default, you'll holographic in, otherwise you'll holographic out. We can make this more complicated later if we need it to, but this should be plenty for now. So if we were to hit play, you would see this kind of sparkle in the way we want it to, if it ever actually plays. Yep. That might be a bit fast. So let's go ahead and bring the speed down a little bit. Why is this so garbage slow? Why is it taking like 10 seconds to switch between play and not? That's strange. So over here in the dialog canvas, we see it goes over to half a second. We're going to move all of this stuff over to a full second. We could also give it something besides the linear sweep, but it would make the counter animation a bit more difficult, so yeah, that should be enough. And so now we got a couple of other things we have to do. One of those things is the text box needs to have a canvas group like so. And what we're going to want is for this canvas group to be animated as well. So to do that, all we have to do is hit this record button and set it up properly. And then over here, it's going to be a 0. So Windows has forcibly restarted my computer every other day for 3 weeks. And even if I click OK, it just brings the warning right back half an hour later. So if you see Windows popping up warnings, I'm not actually sure if it shows up on stream. Maybe Windows is polite enough to make it a local only video element, but I have a feeling it does, because fuck the user. They don't need to use their computer. So, you know, just in case you're wondering, I don't really like it. No, sir. So here's the text box. We're going to bring this canvas group alpha down to 0. And then over here at like 1.5. Move. 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 There we are. Don't know what that was. So now what happens is that it will play, and then the text will fade in. So it kind of sweeps across the... ooh, that wasn't quite right. Sorry, I forgot to set it up over here as 0 as well. So we'll just do that as well. So hit the record button, drop this down to 0. We don't need it to fade out and then fade back in. That would be weird. But you can see how that renders a lot of the swooping kind of pointless because it's just for the portrait. It's okay, though. It's okay. We don't care that much. Leave it like that. We can change it later. But now we have to actually do the meat, which is getting the text to render and stuff like that. So down here in scripts, we're going to go down into the UI directory, and we're going to create a dialog box. Now, dialog box is potentially a reserved keyword. I can't remember. I think we had this problem before, and I had to name it something ridiculous with a Q in it or something. So maybe we will call this something else, because dialog box is just asking for trouble. Because the namespaces don't work properly in Unity. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new script, which we'll call dialog box in diving game. Diving game box, diving dialog. There we are. Diving dialog. That's not too arduous. So this is going to be the pop-up dialog box, including canvas. Public text box. I have to put in the UI, don't I? That's fine. No biggie. Public text box, name text and dialog text. Public raw image portrait. Public, that's not public, that's Publix. It's like the bad 90s new metal band. So then we're going to put in public. Why is this underlined? Yeah, that's because you're an idiot. You haven't figured out that I'm using. Is it not a text box? Is it a text something else? I was like 99% sure it was a text box. Might just be a text. I don't think so, though. That doesn't sound right. Oh well, we'll figure it out in a minute. Public string dialog. And then we're going to have a public string cur dialog, which is a getter and a setter. We're going to have a public float speed. Make it 10. And then we'll have, I guess, more than 10. How about 30? And then we'll have a protected float counter equals 0. And this is going to be a fairly basic setup where we can specify everything we need and it will start to run. But we have to wait until the initial animation sweep is complete before we run. So we're not going to do it in start or in update. We're going to have a new function, which is going to be called public void begin text. Now this public void begin text is going to be baked right into that animation we created. So here's the animation. There it is. Over here, we're going to just maybe right here put in an animation event like so. Unfortunately, we haven't added it to the object yet, so it doesn't know how to find it. We're going to go ahead and drop the driving dialog, this thing, right here. And then we're going to go back here and fill in this event. And you can see how it's big and confusing because there's a lot of shit in this particular area. But there's our begin text right at the end. So now it will call begin text right there, and we'll be able to see the text unfold. In start, what we're going to do is actually clear it out. Dialog text dot text equals null. Not null, empty. Name text. Oh, we don't need to do that. Portrait. Nope, don't need to do that. What we need to do is... That's it. So the only other thing here is when we begin the text, we're going to need to turn ourselves on. So what we're going to do is public bool running equals false. And then here we'll just say running equals true. We could use enabled, but then start wouldn't run properly, or we could run We could run it in start and then disable it. I guess that would be better. Never mind. So enabled equals false. That's not how you spelled enabled. That's how you spell enabled. And then here would just say enabled equals true. That will allow us to use the update when we need it. So update won't get called until the animation is ready, at which point it'll get called every frame. Since it's called every frame, we can just add to the counter, like so. And then we can say that the dialog text.text equals cur dialog. Easy as pie, right? Except for cur dialog just returns the dialog. But we'll go ahead and test it first, make sure that it actually properly pops up, and then we'll make the cur dialog use that counter. There we go. So down here, the mask is currently set to actually show the mask graphic. I thought we turned that off, but whatever. And then we need to fill in these elements. So here's our portrait. Move that to the top. Here's our name. And then here is our text. And then our dialogue is Yodelay he who. Of course, that dialogue should be in a multi-line editor. Good enough. Let's go ahead and hit play and see whether it works. Yep, works like that. So the next thing we're going to do is add in the actual counter, which here in cur dialog is just proceeding apace. What we're going to want to do is have this dialog be returned in snippets. And the way to do that is to simply get the dialog substring. So if counter is greater than dialog, greater than or equal to dialog.length, then return dialog. Otherwise, we want to return a portion of dialog. So return dialog.substring, and then we pass it a 0, and then the length, which would be our counter. Easy as pie, right? Except for we have to actually math.floor that, or math.seal it. Is it mathf? I can never remember. There we are. No problem. That'll give us the nice progression that we'd like. Only problem is that it currently never self-destructs, so we're going to go ahead and do that next. So we got a lot of other options as to what we want to do here. There are things we could do much more complicated. For example, we could look for rich text tags and skip them so that they never show up as partial text. But for now, I think this is fine. It's something we can easily extend later. Oh, Aubrey Beardsley says, disable automatic updates. Hello. So I did disable automatic updates. These are the critical updates that get past the automatic update filter. So unless Microsoft went in and changed all of my settings, which I guess I don't and think is impossible because they do it quite frequently, unless it get around my settings, I've got it so that it only updates when it's a critical update, which apparently there have been 8 or 9 in the past 2 months. So, you know, sorry if I missed your comment for a long time. I put the window in a dumb place and I couldn't see stream chat. So now we've got this running just fine, but of course it doesn't pop up and it doesn't go away. So we're going to want to do a couple of things with that. First thing is we're going to want to add in some option buttons for controlling text and conversations. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and create a new input. There we are. Input. I'm going to create another asset down here. We're going to call this dialogue, like so. And the negative button is going to be Q, and the positive button is going to be E. And we're not going to have any alts. Yeah, that's all fine. It's not any access, though. Yeah, that's fine. So now we've got a button called dialogue, which is Q and E. And what we'll do is if the player presses Q or E, we will go ahead and think that this is a completed object. So if input.get button down dialog, if counter is less than dialog.length, counter equals dialog.length plus 1, else self-destruct. Self-destruct is going to be a pretty basic little function, public void self-destruct. There's a lot of things we might do to clean this up or need to clean this up, such as removing cameras. So we're not going to be using just onDestroy as on itself, but for now it is just onDestroy, just destroy rather, because I don't know what cleanup we'll need, but I think it's safer to do it like this. So that should work. We can also call this via an event, which will be good if you do something and it cuts off someone. So what that does is if you press Q or E, it either moves the text to completed, or if it's already completed, it gets rid of the text. What we're actually going to want to do here is the opposite of this. This is not self-destruct. This is going to be close, isn't it? Because we actually have an animation for this. So all we really need to do is get our animator and set the trigger. What did I call it? Did I call it away or close or? Let's check. No, that's not the right thing. Aubrey says that's fine, that I ignored him. He doesn't seem to take offense personally. Yeah, I mean, I'm not not an expert streamer, I'm afraid. So I do a lot of less than great things in my streams, which is why I only have one viewer. All right, so there, what we've done is we've set the trigger to out. The problem is that out is going to end up calling begin text right at the beginning, and that's going to end up not doing anything bad, but there's no trigger for self-destructing. So we actually are going to need a different animation for self-destructing, which is fine. I can do that. So down here in the dialog canvas, we're going to go ahead and change it to holographic out. For some reason, it moved to a different directory. We'll just go put it back in here. And holographic out is going to start right here where everybody is nice and happy. We'll go ahead and just wibble these guys. And wibble this guy. Like so. And then what we'll do is we'll go over here to the 1 second mark, and we will phase this out by moving the thing up like this. Yoink. And then we will move these guys down. Like that. And that should be enough. All we need to do is add an event right here at the end. So there we are. Right at the very end. And that's going to be our self-destruct, which should be at the end. Oh, it's up there at the top. Okay. Oh, okay, I moved it. Good, good. So now we've got 2 commands. And really what we want is the new one. The old one we can just delete. And then this is obviously going to be based on a... There, perfect. That should do. And now it'll call self-destruct automatically. So now what we'll do is we'll hit play. And I hit E once, and I hit E again. There we are. See? Easy as pie. The only problem is that update doesn't start running until this animation is complete, which isn't good enough. So we're going to need update to run continuously, which is kind of what I was doing originally. That's fine. Public bool running equals false. So down here we just say running equals true. And here we do not disable it. Perfect. And then here in update, we leave that, and then we say if not running, return. Oh. There we are. That should do. That way we can skip the animation part. I mean, we won't skip the animation, but we'll actually have the text showing up immediately rather than waiting, which is good enough for now. Later on, we might change it so the animation leaps ahead. But either way, let's make sure it works with Q as well, because that's the negative value. Yeah, it works fine. So that's going to be fine for our pop-up, right? Only problem is that we don't currently have any sort of ability to create pop-ups. So in order to create the pop-ups, we're going to need something in this game scene that understands that we're telling it to create pop-ups. It doesn't have to be in the scene. It could be something that hasn't been spawned in, but we need a link to it. And in order to have a link to it, it would be easiest if it was just in the scene. It might also be valuable because we can create variants of this for different characters. Let's go ahead and, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I actually want to do with this that this is really, really pretty bad, visually speaking. There are a lot of other things that I prefer to do to make it look a little bit less shitty before we go off and, you know, do other things. But without a camera to add this, it's always going to look kind of shitty. Shall we go ahead and add a camera? Let's go ahead and make it so that your buddy is the one talking to you. And what we'll do is we'll go into the buddy's face. There it is. Can you get closer than that? It's really far away. There we are. And basically, we're just going to point a camera back at the buddy's face. So to do that, we will create a camera. Everything's running really slow for some reason. It's very awkward. And then we'll just move it and then spin it. Oh, yeah. No. Go. Well, it's rotated incorrectly. There we are. So let's go ahead and bring this to have a real low field of view, something like this, right? We're also going to lower the far clip plane to just behind their head. Well, that's the bad way to do it. Yeah, something like that. That way you'll get this, and you won't get any any background. You'll only get the character. We can change that later if need be. But basically, this needs to have a render texture that we render to, and then we can put the render texture onto that raw image if it's the right person. To do that, we're going to need a concept of a character. Now we have a concept of a diver. If we take a look, there is like diver controller and stuff, but these aren't all going to be divers. So we can call it like a human or a face. Let's call it a talking head. I don't want to call it a character because that's very close to a reserved word. So over here on the buddy, we'll drop in this talking head. Boom. The talking head is going to be able to spawn in a dialog box. So public diving dialog box. And then we're going to have public void say string dialog. At which point we will go in and, why is this underlined? Presumably, you're just a fucking idiot. I'm going to go ahead and presume he's a fucking idiot. All right. So when we want to say something, we're going to have to create a new diving dialog. Now, there is some difficulty here in that if we want to say things that are overlapping, what do? We're going to go ahead and just ignore that for now. So diving dialog D equals diving dialog dot instantiate diving dialog box. We don't need to worry about its position or its parent, but we do have to worry about the name in the portrait. Portrait equals portrait. We don't have something called portrait, but we will. Public render texture. We'll call it just a texture. Portrait. I guess it has to be a render texture after all. I don't know. We'll see. No, I think it's just barfed itself. It doesn't know what it's underlining. This is like basic stuff that's not working out. Not sure. And then we want d.nameText.text equals name. And then we want d.dialogue equals dialogue. Perfect, right? So that should do for the ability to force this character to say something. So that will allow a talking head to say whatever we want it to say, but we still have to track the talking head down. So we're going to want to have a talking head system for assigning a constant. Public static, call it buddy talk. That's going to be a string dialogue. But we're also going to want to have it be public static talking head buddy. And then this will just be buddy.say dialogue. No problem, right? Only other thing we want to do is here in start, we're going to want to make sure that we are the buddy. So public bool buddy, valid buddy. I think that's true. And say if valid buddy, then buddy equals this. That way, regardless of what's going on, we'll have the ability to say, the buddy can just say stuff. And that's going to be a valuable way to set this up. We'll just grind through that a little bit. Now, we aren't creating render textures here. We are simply saying that there is going to be one. Yeah. Oh, my bad. There we are. So I was right the first time. I still don't know why these are garbage. Whatever. So what we're going to do now is drag the talking head up to the top, like this. We got this idea that the portrait needs to be, needs to have a texture. We need to assign it ahead of time. We'll get to that in a second because we're not going to want to do it like that. But down here in the plugins, in the prefabs, we're going to want to drop this dialog canvas right smack dab into the prefabs for ourselves, delete it from the game world. And then that dialog canvas can be used by our buddy as the dialog canvas. The texture, we're going to want to create it rather than not. So we'll just do public int render width, and it'll equal 160, and render height 160. That way we can change it later without too much problem. Here in start, we're going to go ahead and assign a texture. Another option is that we could wait until the character talks. But these are small render textures, so I'm not too concerned about it. What we are going to want to do is also be able to turn the camera on and off. So we're going to want to have a camera. There we are. So yeah, I'm just thinking about the best way to do this stuff. There we go. So the idea here is that we'll actually make that the current dialog box. And what we'll do is, as long as there's a current dialog box, we'll keep the camera running, and otherwise we won't. So void, we'll go ahead and trying to decide if I should use the enabled thing or not. I think we'll just use the enabled trick. This is going to be void update. If we're calling update, then we're currently enabled. So we'll just say if there is no current dialog box, then turn off the camera and disable ourselves. And in here, we're going to have to turn the portrait camera on. Just in case we don't want it running. It should be turned off to start with, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So that's going to be how we do it, but we also have to set up this portrait cam with the proper render texture. So render texture You know what? Let's go ahead and make it a render texture after all. I was kind of just putting it aside in case I wanted to like do sprites or something, but I think it's better if it's a render texture. Portrait equals new render texture. And we can specify a bunch of elements here, like the width and the height. So we're going to go ahead and use render width, or render height, and the depth, which I actually don't know. I think that I'm trying to remember if we need. Well, we'll know for sure in a minute, I guess. So we'll just do it like this, and then what we'll do is we will say portrait cam dot render target. Target display, target texture. There we are. That way we won't have to worry about the render texture actually being filled. We can just let it be. We'll put that in a tooltip here. Now the reason I'm making it public is so that we can look at it. It just makes it's easier to just look at it that way, you know? So there we are. We've got the buddy spawning in a couple more elements. We will need to have that. Oh, it errored. Name portrait cam. That's because I spelled it differently. Grind. Ever since I stopped paying Unity, these terminal errors have been popping up, which are completely unrelated to the project. Real great. Hopefully nobody else has those problems. So there we are. We now have this. We have to set it up properly. So the camera is here. Go ahead and drop that in. We're going to call this the portrait camera. Like so. And there are lots of options we could use to try and change how it looks and stuff like that, but I don't think any of those matter. This is only going to turn on when someone's actually talking, and people should only be talking one or two at a time. So it should be okay. The other thing I was thinking is using like a gesture-based system, but that sounds like a lot of work. So I'll put that off until I've got lots of free time to work on it, I suppose. So there's the portrait, no portrait. You should tell me that it's auto-generating. Yeah, good. Current dialog box, currently empty. Yeah, all good. So with that in mind, I think that what we want to do is have an event that happens. So there's a lot of ways we could set this up, but I think the easiest way is just to do a collision box. So we're going to create an arbitrary collision box and set it up to call that setup. This is going to require some helpers. We may already have a helper. Let's take a look here. If we just look inside this, we have a collision responder right here. So what we're going to do is this collision responder, we're also going to add in a say command. Now the reason we have to add in a say command here is because we're not allowed to point the Unity event at a class. We can only point it at an object. So there's no way for us to point this at the buddy or even at the class of talking head. So we have to do it like this instead. Boom. No problems. This is a very, very basic. Oh, it's called Buddy Talk because I'm an idiot. It's called Buddy Say. It's obviously not called Buddy Talk. That would be dumb. All right, so that should work. We'll just go ahead and add in a box. No, not there. Just like randomly in nowhere. Game object, 3D object, cube. There it is, a cube. We'll move this down, scale it up. Put it over here. Drop it in. I'm actually thinking, okay, we're over there. So I'm going to just drop this near our first object just so that we know where it's going to be. And we'll obviously get rid of the mesh renderer, and the collider is a trigger. And then we're going to want a collision responder. Just drop that in here. And then this is going to be collide only with the player. And we'll add in an onCollided collision responder buddy say. Hello, how do you like my dialog box? We're also going to have to add some audio to the dialog box. I'm thinking some old school bleeping, but we'll get to that later. This computer needs to be rebooted, so I guess it's not too bad that Microsoft plans to reboot it. Nothing happened. All right, so there's something wrong with it. Let's try it again. First things first, it appears that our buddy camera is got an audio listener attached to it, which is dumb. We don't need that. Yeah, get rid of that. And another thing, it doesn't seem like the buddy actually tried to say anything, so we're going to add in just a quick little debug.log buddy says, and then the dialog. Now one possibility, I haven't used this in a while, one possibility is that the collide with function is busted. Let's take a quick look here. There we are. So here it is. This is the problem, collide only with this. What we want to say is it's got to contain it. If C equals collide only with this, it's actually not C, it's like C.gameObject equals collide only with this, or C.transform.is child of collide only with this.transform. Then do it, otherwise don't. So if not that, there we go. Now that should work, because the problem was we were trying to collide with the player, but the player itself has no colliders. There's several colliders built into the player, but they are children. So that's probably what the problem was. Or not. All right. Just keep trying until we figure out what the problem is. It's not even triggering. Okay, so this was it here. But that was way late. Am I coming in too high? I bet I'm just coming in too high. Let's just scale it up a little bit. So it might be that collision.transform is not the same as collision.gameObject. I need to do collision.gameObject.transform. We'll see in a second here. Why am I not colliding? I'm really definitely inside this thing. Why is this not working? Oh, this is on collision enter. We actually want on trigger enter, don't we? Fuck, this one uses a different This one uses a collider instead of a collision. So C.collider? Yeah, okay, so we're actually just going to do the other way around. No biggie. So C.gameObject does exist. Good. Looks like it's all fine. Stop being grumpy. Give me what I need. I just need you to fire. Why aren't you? There you are. Hooray. So Buddy says hello a billion times until it crashes the machine. So what happened there is every time it hit, we triggered it. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have it so that Buddy can't say something if he's already saying something. Here in Say, what we're going to do is check and see if we've got a current dialog box. If current dialog box, then we're just going to change the dialog and reset it. I'll call it just reset. Return. So we'll go over to the diving dialog box here and create a reset. So reset might be, I think reset is actually a, that's a reserved word. We're just going to go ahead and change it. So there we are. Not a big deal, I don't think. It's still underlining shit. Oh, the other thing we're going to say, if return. So don't say the same thing over and over. That would be stupid. So the problem with this is that we have several colliders for feet and for torso. So when we enter into the trigger volume, we enter into it 3 times. Well, that's trippy. So, interesting. If we try and track down the dialog box here, there it is. There's only one. That's good. There was quite a delay when it first spawned in, so we may have to deal with that. It's probably creating the render texture. But as you can see, there's something funky going on with this camera. That's absolutely not what the buddy looks like unless the buddy has gone to hell while I wasn't watching. Just take a quick little look at the buddy here. No, he's right next door. He's right here, so I don't know why the camera is giving us such crap. If we go into the buddy, we can grab the camera. There's our portrait cam somewhere here. Doop. The camera is currently rendering that when we allow it to render everything. Okay, so we'll go ahead and tell it to render everything and see what it has to say for itself. No, it's still like weirdly purple. Oh, of course it's weirdly purple, you friggin' idiot. You've colored it purple. I've got to put it into the game world in order to edit it. That's fine. Just drop it in. Expand it. Take this portrait box, take this portrait, and make it not purple. That still doesn't explain why we were having that strange issue where it did rendering upside down and then the right side up and then upside down. Let's try it out again and see what's up. Pop in. There we are. So you can see that the camera is... Whoa. Twitch just barfed and reloaded the whole page. I think my computer might be on its last legs here. Maybe because it's like 95 in my room. Looks like the stream is still running, and that's all that really matters. So now we've got this dialog box, but you can see that the camera is really inexplicable. It feels like it's not clearing, but it should be clearing fine. So it's depth only, but it's not set to don't clear. It's set to depth only. Let's go ahead and set it back to Skybox. And we'll go ahead and see what it has to say then. I might need to just set the depth. It might just be a depth problem, but that's super weird because it shouldn't be rendering upside down regardless. That's correct. It's just garbage ugly. So we're going to go ahead and take this portrait cam. Can I get close to the portrait cam? There it is. We're going to move it just a little bit because it is a little too close. There we go. We're going to go ahead and set that back to depth only. And we're going to just change the depth of the render texture. I actually don't remember what the depth stands for. I don't usually have to worry about it, so I kind of blanked on it. We might also want to set the buddy up with the correct textures for their eyes and eyebrows and stuff, but we can come to that later. Of course, they're going to be wearing a full mask, so yeah, that's not right. I don't understand why it's rendering once upside down and then once right side up. That's not how it should work. Why would it do that? I literally just cannot conceive of why it would render upside down once and then right side up once. Even if we change it to Skybox, I think it's probably still rendering twice. It's just that we only see the last render. That's hugely wasteful and stupid. If you know anything about that, let me know. I unfortunately don't. But now, we've got the ability to have your buddy say whatever we want him to say, or whatever we want them to say. So what we're going to do is we're going to tweak the dialog box, because I've left some space above their head on the camera. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change the dialog box so that that space is full height. That way we'll be able to use that blue to our advantage. So here's the portrait box. And inside the portrait box we've got a portrait, but the portrait isn't full height. So we're going to just make it full height, which is like 200. There we go. And we're going to apply that. And then we're going to just delete it out of the screen. The only other thing we have to do is tell the talking head to be 200 high. And now what we should have is enough blue above their head for that text. And I might, tweak it later. Oh, it's stretched. It's not supposed to be stretched there. Why is it stretched? So if we take a look at the buddy, the render texture is 160 by 160. Pretty sure that's not 160 there, buddy. Did I? No, it's correct. Look, render height, render height. Is this not? That was the problem. Try that again. Those are supposed to be static values, and I accidentally made them local values, which explains why they didn't properly change. Static values get don't cache the same way, so you can see how now it's not stretched anymore. It's just a little bit too tall, a little too close to the top of the screen, so we'll just go down there and drag it another, tiny tidbit down. That might be a little too far. If we're at night, we might make their name white instead of black. Lots of things we can do to test that. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's quote-unquote fine. Just for the sake of not being creepy, let's go ahead and put in the correct animator, the correct materials on this character. So you can see how the character's face is full of these flat white textures. That's what you get when you don't correctly import your materials. I think that we do have the materials for the eyes and stuff. They're not set up right. Okay, so they have the correct ones, but they're not currently set up. So there's the brown eye. Just pop that in. The problem with this texture is that, or this material rather, is that it is not intended to be opaque. We could use cutout, fade, or transparent. I'm going to use cutout because otherwise we're going to have problems with transparency. But this is all temporary anyway because of the nature of what we're doing. The eyebrows need to have the eyebrow material. And that's also going to be cut out. And then the eyelashes. I don't see any eyelashes. All right, we'll duplicate the eyebrow. There's going to be the eyelashes. Of course, we don't want the eyebrow texture. We want the eyelashes texture. And we are. That's a little bit overly feminine. Let's pull it back a little. Probably have to do some custom eyelash modifiers later. There we are. So that is the text box. It didn't. It took me a lot longer than I thought it would because of that animation stuff I was trying to do. There's got to be a better way to do that. I just don't know it. I bet I could do it with a custom material, but I don't happen to know how to make shaders for UI elements. I do happen to know some nice stuff for other shaders, but we'll get to that later. So what we're going to want to do is we'll probably have to add a press E after a certain amount of time has passed. Let's go ahead and do that now while we're paying attention. So we'll just drop this dialog canvas back in. And go on over to it. And then we'll create another panel inside here. Yeah, making popping noises. There we go. And now we just add in, this is a prompt. And it requires a text box inside, so that's exactly what we're going to do. Just create a text box and fill it in. Boom. And then we're going to go and put the text box in the center, because why not? We're going to press E. And obviously we'll shrink the prompt down until it is more the correct size. And we will make this the same kind of off blue color. Make it green. Press E. We're going to need to add in a canvas group, like so. Make that transparent. And then over here in the dialog canvas, actually we don't need... Yeah, okay. We can just turn it on and off. Well, that's what we'll do for now. Leave the canvas group there, but we'll just turn it on and off here in the dialog canvas. So prompt starts as off. And then in the dialog, here it is. We pop this up. We're going to need to have a prompt game object. Then down here in update, if counter is greater than dialog.length times 5, then prompt.set active true. There we are. That's all we need to do. Yes, that will run every update, regardless of whether prompt is active or not, but it's a very small thing. I don't care too much about it. All we really need to do is set up the prompt to actually have a correct doop. And then we'll hit apply. And then we'll delete this. The only thing I'm worried about is whether or not that's going to end up being cut by the mask. We'll know for sure in a minute here. I can always take it out from behind the mask. It doesn't. Neither of those things has to be behind the mask. So there it is. It's already not behind the mask. That's fine. All right, so what we've done today is we've created the dialogue boxes, which are going to be critical to talking. This game is going to be very heavy on using dialogue to explain missions and stuff and mission progressions. Just because otherwise I'd have to try and make assets that describe all that stuff. And while there are going to be some holographic recreations and stuff, I think it's a lot easier if we use a text box for it. The only question is whether or not I should create the audio for the text box now, or whether I should go and try and do some modeling of terrain assets. I think we might as well finish off the text box, right? So give me a second. I'm going to pop up Audacity here and just quickly see what we've got in terms of test. And then we can save that as... Do we export audio? That's not the right location. We want to go into... Oh, it is the right location. Okay, cool. So that works for me. All right, bring it back. Boom. Funny thing about using Phoenix Wright is that YouTube always chooses Phoenix Wright for the icon, regardless of how short of a time he's on screen. I could put Phoenix Wright up for half a second and he'd be the dominant icon representing the entire thing. All right, so we're just going to make some bleeping noises and then modify them, but I need to put my headset on so I can hear them. Beep. Beep, beep, beep. So then if we change the speed to something like this. It's a little squeaky. Let's pull it back a little bit. That's a little too far. That's fine. So we'll go ahead and export that as voice bleep. So what we're going to do is we are going to add a... Did I delete it from the scene? I did. So we're going to have to add that back into the scene again. It's not a big deal. Here is our dialogue canvas. We're going to have to add in an audio system to the dialogue canvas. There we are. And we'll just pop in that bleep that we just made. We're going to want to not play it on awake, and we're going to want to make it so that it is entirely 2D. Good, good. This is all fine. Yeah, I'm fine with all this. So now what we need to do is have it so that the diving dialogue actually plays it as it's proceeding. So we're going to want to have a public audio source. And then what we'll do is during update, if we are not running currently, we're going to run it. So if audio source dot playing, audio source audio dot playing. So if it's not playing, we'll want it to play. So obviously we can just say audio dot play, but we actually want to play it. No, we don't need to delay it. We actually want to play it with a specific pitch. And that pitch is going to be random.range 0.7 to 1.2, something like that. And that will allow us to get, blah, 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 very, very Animal Crossing sound, I think. I haven't actually played it in a decade. I'm actually thinking more of Shining Force 2. Let's find out. Oh, I forgot to save it. Why is it taking this long? Because I paused it. I forgot. This actually has to go in if the counter is less than. So if counter is less than dialogue.length and there's no audio playing. We don't want to continue playing bleeps forever. That would be very strange sounding. And the other thing we have to do is save this change, like so. Delete it. And hit play. Well, that didn't work. I forgot to assign it. So my brilliant self, as always, forgot to do the actual job that we're supposed to be doing. No biggie. We'll just drag it on up and do it. Yeah. There we are. Boom. Try that again.
Beep, 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 beep.
Reminds me of King of All Cosmos. Let's hear it again.
Beep, 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 beep.
I like it. I like it. Obviously, we can do a lot in terms of creating alternate bleeps with different lengths and overplaying bleeps so they are they don't wait for the previous bleep to completely finish. Let's just go ahead and take a quick little look at the bleep in close here. There we are. I think that we can cut just a little bit more audio off the back in order to make it a little bit nicer to listen to. The front, yeah, we can cut a little bit more off the front too. The question is, what is this? Let's go ahead and get rid of it. So now we've shortened the bleep, which means it's going to come a lot faster. We can get rid of that speed by doing something like putting in a delay, like a randomization factor.
Beep, 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 beep.
That's not bad. It might be a little bit loud, but it's not bad.
Beep, 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 beep.
So if you're wondering why my hands are trailing dirt, it's because the dialog box is, or the dialog spawner is not set to the right layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab that cube here, dialog test cube. We're going to just set that to the ignore raycast layer, which is where that sort of thing goes, because otherwise the game thinks that it's dirt.
Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, I like it. Some weirdities going on with the camera there, but whatever. We'll fix all that stuff in time.
Beep, 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 beep.
Why can't I see the buddy? My guess is that I just had a problem where the camera got turned off from the previous and then didn't get turned on in time for the new one. That shouldn't be it, though. If we look at the portrait cam, it's actually rendering nothing but blue. I think the near clip plane is the problem there. It is. That's fine. We can fix that. But that's probably why these rocks look so weird. Because the glow... Is that it? Is it because the glow is set to... Let's take a look here. If I select this rock and I take a look down here, this is called a highlightable object, and it uses a shader called the highlightable shader, which has an outline width of 0 to start with, because that's how we do it. But as you can see, I can't turn off the light. So I bet this is what's going on. I bet the fact that this is highlightable is why it errors. Let's go ahead and try it. Let's go ahead and test it out. So first things first, I'm going to change that camera's clip plane a little bit. It's a little too far from the face. Just grab it and make it like point something. That'll do. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to open up the highlightable object. Well, we'll try it. The problem is I'm not 100% sure how to do this without ruining the entire setup. But if the outline color is the problem, I want to know about it. I could just duplicate the shader. So we'll go ahead and close that window out for a second. And select this shader. Can I... Unity stopped responding. We'll go ahead and call this highlightable without glow. Open that in the shader editor and then name it, because right now it's overlapping. There we go. And how down here we'll just turn this off. That's all we need to do, but we do need to save it, and there is still a bug where it refuses to save. There we go. So that should allow us to use this shader instead. So we'll just drop that into our shader setup. Boom. Now if we go inside the rock, you can see that it is properly transparent rather than being bright blue. The question is whether or not we're going to get a crash attempting to change the value of the rock. We'll see. It didn't help. So even though we changed it so that it doesn't have that glow, it still has the cut. So it's not the glow that's causing the problem. Well, we have a disposable object. Let's try it out. Let's start to disable bits and see what part of it is not working. So there we are. Just save that. If we take a look over here, we don't have anything on the side that is... We do have a forward-only render path as opposed to a deferred-only render path. That's actually probably it. That's the problem. The outline requires forward only, and I think everything else in the game might be using deferred. I can't remember anymore. I tend to just set those things to something I thought was good last year and not not consider it any further. But that's probably it. It's probably the render path. That fixed it. Okay, so it was the problem was that we were doing one deferred path and one forward path setup, and they were getting a Z conflict. I knew that there was a reason they were getting a Z conflict, but I couldn't figure it out. Now we know it. And unfortunately for us, now that we know it, we're going to have to give up on using the glow effect that's built into the system. It's not going to work. We can still do this emission glow, but it's not as good. I mean, there are a lot of other things I could do. I could manually create the glow effect. I could create an opposing mesh that is inside out. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this without using the built-in glow, the built-in what do you call it, outline effect. Well, let's go ahead and just take a quick little look at this without glow again. If we turn on the outline effect, it goes to forward only, and then if we go to deferred only, it just goes to deferred only? That's kind of weird. Shouldn't it disable the outline? Is it just one of those situations where there's a strange default? No, it switched back to forward only. All right. So if we switch it from vertex offset to vertex, no, that's not going to change anything. Does it have, is it no fog? Is no fog the problem? I don't know why that would be the problem. Yeah, so it's definitely the outline. Don't know. Maybe I'll do something like a grid effect or something. I like that outline, but I can't use it because it's forward only, and that's not going to work for me. If you have any ideas there, let me know. Like a cool effect I can do in deferred mode. I mean, also I could change. You know what? Let's try it some other way. Let's try turning on the outline again. And then what we'll do, save that, close this. We'll actually go into the holographic image that we're using here. Where is it? Oh, it doesn't exist. That's right. It's part of the mission. There it is, the HUD guide. So this is the HUD guide. And if we take a look, we're using this holo indicator shader, which is set to be... I do not get the option to change this to forward only. This is clearly going to be a deferred pass. All right, so that's not going to work. We're going to have to do it the way I was doing it. We're going to have to give up on the outline, at least for the moment. All right, that was exciting. Save, save. There we are. So now we've solved one of the ongoing problems we were having. We've created text boxes. We've created bleeps and bloops. And I am hungry. Apparently I forgot to eat lunch. So I'm probably going to stop real soon. You got any questions? Let me know now. I'm going to go ahead and change that color a little bit. No, I'm not going to bother. We'll have to completely change that image later on. So whatever works. The only problem is that since I did audio, it's not something I can take a GIF of. I'm pretty sure you can hear all that stuff. I don't think that the audio is turned down that far on the stream. Well, that's a mistake. We'll have to fix that later on too. But those are things that I just put together super fast, so it's okay that they're a little bit busted right now. I think those are 2D sounds. That's not going to work. Let's turn those into 3D sounds, because that's how they should be. We're also going to shrink the rock. It's way too big. So just, there we are. And if we take a look at this rock, it's currently set to, it is set to 3D. Why does it sound 2D? Don't know. Of course, searching for rocks gets harder the less obvious the rocks are. Ah, there's one. This is more of an example of how it might be to actually search for random things. They're not going to always be giant floating obelisks. I wrote like a big document about the sorts of things that you'll do. And so we'll probably work on that in the next week or two, getting that sorted out and making those actually in the game. For the moment, however, we're just picking up rocks and throwing them for no particular reason. So well, that wasn't quite the right sound either. Oh, I see a rock. Obviously, this is as boring as missions could possibly be. This isn't how the missions are going to be. I'm just setting it up. Clearly the rock is bouncing off the player, and that's what's causing the triple, quadruple sound effects. Oh, Mifa says, where did you get that diving movement controller? Mifa's check that the audio asset is for... That's a good point. That's probably what it is. So I made the diving movement controller. You can actually go back and watch me make it. I made it on stream. So it needs more work, but I kind of like it. There's a lot of things about it that are pretty unique. Let me go ahead and show you one. One of the things about it that's a little bit strange is that while you can go up and down like this pretty easily, if you move to the side, it actually cuts underneath the character. I'm going to change exactly how. But the idea is that I want the player to feel like this is them and not like they're watching a diver. So there's a lot of hands stuff going on, and there's also a lot of camera stuff going on. Another cool thing about this is that if you're doing something like, you know, grabbing an object or something, when you move your camera like this, you'll see it. For some reason, the fulcrum moved. It shouldn't be on the belly. That's a strange place for it. I'm not sure why it drifted like that. But it's not supposed to be that far back. It's supposed to be more like this. I think that what happened is I used to have a different default animation, and so it got a little bit tweaked. Yeah, that's more like what I was thinking. So there's a lot of details to the camera, to the system. Like it checks for what your hands can touch and all of that jazz. Go over into audio. Here's the Pashao. This is what we're using. We'll go ahead and force it to mono just to see if that helps. Because it sure sounds like it's in two-dimensional space. It does not sound like it's in three-dimensional space at all. Hey, I clicked. Oh yeah, that's definitely more 3D. I guess it doesn't warn you that the sound effect you're using can't be played in 3D space. That's interesting. So for example, if we come over here, you can sort of see how the character is going to interact. The hands need work and stuff like that, but it gives you a real sense that you exist in this world. I think my computer's about to go dead, so we're going to stop here. Thanks for your time, everybody. Maybe I'll see you on Saturday or next Wednesday. Have a nice day.